What's up? This is Zach with Barley and Chops, and welcome to the second installment on my quest to go from bum to brewer. I'm going to be documenting my journey from a guy who likes and drinks beer but knows very little about brewing to a guy who likes and drinks beer that I brew myself. My mission is to use my new Spike Solo brew in a bag system to become an adequate to exceptional home brewer. I want to make good beer and want to have a good time doing it. If you want to see more of my videos on this series and pellet grill and smoker adventures, be sure to like and subscribe below. So today is brew day number 1. This is launch day, baby. And I imagine this is exactly what Elon Musk feels like on his launch day, where he sends actual rockets launching into space. The only difference is that I am not an engineer or a scientist. In fact, I failed high school chemistry. So this is unfamiliar territory, and I'm trying to figure this out via Google and YouTube, baby. Luckily, though, I have some reinforcements. I'm here with my buddy, sous chef and assistant brewer, Derek. He has brewed before, so we're tackling this adventure together with his help. While brewing, we've got 3 racks of ribs doing the 3-2-1 method on the RecTech. Be sure to check out my video on how to do the 3-2-1 method on the RecTech below. All right, so here's what we've done so far. For starters, a lot of YouTube and process guide studying. As a brewer virgin, I wanted to get my head around brew day so that when we got here, we could just run. Also, part of the goal here is to put some pressure on Spike to see if, as a bum, I could get this baby up and running entirely from the process guide. 2, unboxed, assembled, cut hoses, cleaned and sanitized my equipment. 3, auto-tuned my PID controller. We actually did have some uncertainty on this process and had to head back to the old YouTube. Quickly found some other vlogger walking me through that process, and we were able to get back on track pretty quickly. Our biggest hang-up on this part really was just understanding if we had actually completed the process. Getting started was the easy part. Process guide walked us through that nicely, but we had no idea if it was working and when it was done. Ultimately, we decided we were finished because it neutralized and went to the set temperature. And finally, a trip to the homebrew store. We had to buy a carboy, a hydrometer. At the time, I had no idea what the heck that was, but ultimately it's going to tell me if this beer is successful and if there's alcohol inside of it. This is also where we got the ingredients for our beer recipe. That part was really easy, a lot easier than what I had anticipated. They had a bunch of beers to pick from, as you can see here. I told them what I wanted, which was, and is today, a Honey Weizen, all grain. Again, all grain. We're not doing an extract beer. We've got the Spike Solo system, which is an all grain process. That's what we're using today. So they went into the back, which I'm told is usually open for you to do yourself outside of COVID. That's where you can scoop the grains, smell them, eat them, stick them in your ear, whatever you want to do with them. So he went back, did that, grabbed me literally everything I needed to make beer. We're good to go, or at least I hope so. So here's what we've got. We had 8 pounds of grain. We already dumped those in, you know what they look like, but it was 4 pounds of Wireman pale wheat malt and 4 pounds of raw 2-row pale. We've also got 1 ounce of German Tettnang, that's hops for you folks at home, 1 pound of honey. As you can see, that is a light amber honey, and liquid yeast, American wheat. Here's our conundrum though. This has 8 pounds of grain, and my Spike Solo system minimum grain for 5 gallons of beer is 11 pounds. So we spent some time playing around with the calculators online, and ultimately to make this work, we changed our brew volume from 5 gallons to 3. That means we'll be starting out with 6 gallons of water. Okay, we're ready to fill it up with strike water. Again, we're going to 6 gallons, and because we're making 3 gallons of beer instead of the intended 5 gallons of beer. So we're going a little bit light. 6 gallons, let's fill her up. Okay, so our mash temperature per the recipe is 152. We're going to set the PID controller to 157. We're going to add 5 degrees because in theory, when we dump the grains in, that water temperature is going to lower. So what we'll do right now, pretty easy. Let's set our controller to 157. As easy as just clicking that down arrow. 157. Let's turn on our element. And then what we're going to do is we're going to attach our hoses for the pump and get that water circulating throughout the kettle. What I did was I built a holder for my pump, but unfortunately we got to get this pump lower than the port level in order to get it fired up. So once the pump gets going, we can hang it on my nice neat hook, but for now we're just going to get it set up like that. Okay, hoses are on. We're going to open both of our ports. And simply flip the switch to turn on our pump. Okay, we got the pumps going. As you can see, it just took a second to get rocking. But now that it's going, what we've got is a whirlpool effect. So it's drawing from this port, going through the pump, and exhaling through this one, which is just a touch lighter. And okay, so we had our water going already, our first mistake. Checked the process guide, made sure that when we were heat striking our water, that we were doing this properly. We are not. We're actually supposed to have the grain bin inside of our kettle for this process. And instead of running the water into that port, what we want to do is run it into this one. So what we're going to do, stop our pump, close our port, move our hose, turn it back on, and as you can see, still a whirlpool effect as I referenced, but now we're doing it in the grain bin. So again, we're going to let that get up to temperature. I'm going to start my stopwatch, and we're going to see how long it takes to get up to temperature. Again, we're going to 157. Okay, we're at temperature. Took about just over 20 minutes. We're ready to dump in the grains. So what we're going to do, turn our element and our pump off. It's definitely hot in there. It says you can hang your handle right on there, but because I'm doing this solo, we're just going to set the lid off to the side. Don't have a mash paddle, but we also, again, we're doing kind of a weenie batch of beer for our first time, so we're going to use a weenie mash paddle here. This is just a spatula. Again, we don't have a lot of water in there, so I don't think it should be a problem. Generally, what's recommended on the process guide is having somebody help you pour this in and stirring all at the same time, because Sous Chef Derek and Brewmaster Derek is controlling the camera. We're just going to do a little bit at a time and stir it in as we go. Oh yeah, that smells like beer. Smells like beer is brewing in there. All right. Okay, a little bit in there. Keep it moving. Okay. That may have been a little aggressive. It said you want to avoid dough balls, which, while I don't know exactly what dough balls are, I can imagine what that might be in terms of grain in here. So you want to get water covering all of these grains, and really that's our goal in this process, as I understand it. All right, we're going for it. You can tell that there's a couple different kinds in here. Again, all I told him was what kind of beer we wanted. And he put everything together. So I'm not sure what it is, but there appears to be multiple kinds in here. This looks pretty thick. This actually looks suspiciously thick. All my grain is in. Again, this is looking probably thicker than what I had anticipated. As we come back to this, this may be our first sign of error when we review this process if our beer doesn't turn out. So what we're going to do now, though, we're going to keep running with it. We're going to turn our pump back on. We want that to continue recirculating over the top of this. And I'm just going to make sure that any of the grain that may have gotten stuck on the sidewalls is back in. Okay, that's on. We're going to turn our element on, but before we do, again, remember we added 5 degrees. We're up to 157 from our recipe. We're going to want to turn that back down to 152, which is the temperature that our recipe calls for. So we're back at 152. Our element is back on. As you can see, we're only 1 degree below our set point, and we're going to let this go for 60 minutes. Okay, so again, grain is in, and the process guide told me to turn the ball valve away out of the pump to about 1/4. We went just a little bit more with the idea that we wanted to make sure that there was enough wort circulating around in here to cover all of the grain and make sure it was recirculating water throughout. So that, again, just a little bit more than 1/4. Our temperature on our PID is humming along exactly at our set point within 1 degree right now. Doesn't ask you to put the lid on during this process, but we're outside. So what we're going to do this time is put this on. I don't want any critters or creatures getting into our beer, at least not at this point. So lid on. We're going to let this thing go out all the way through to the timer. Okay, so we've had this in the mash for 60 minutes. We're ready to hang and drain. And Vorlauf, that's a new step that we're going to add in here as well. So what we've done for the last 5 minutes, we've had the pump off to let all of the grain inside of there drain as much down. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take off our lid. As you can see, there's been a lot of wort that has drained through. We're going to turn off our heating element per the process guide. We are going to pick up and hang on the back 2 hooks. You can hear all of the wort draining down below. And now we're going to do what the process guide refers to as the Vorlauf. And what that is, in layman's terms, is a final rinse of the grain. So we turned our pump back on, and it says for 10 minutes, we are going to want to rinse over the top of our grain. It's going to act as a filter for the final part of this process. Okay, we've got the process guide in hand for this step. There's a lot of moving parts. First step, what we were going to do, it says that you can do this in advance. What we were wanting to do is we wanted to wait until this was all the way done dripping and show you the entire process. We are going to move this hose from the basket port, unhook it, down to the secondary port on the bin. That's going to be for the Whirlpool that we've got going. We're going to take this off, we're going to set it down to the side. Like I said, it's pretty much done dripping. And maybe it's because we didn't do an enormous batch of beer, but this really isn't that heavy. I feel like in some of the videos that I watched, they made it seem like that was about 1,000,000 pounds. It really isn't too bad. So we've got our wort in here. That's looking pretty good. Next step, we want to take our PID controller, turn it to manual mode, and I'm going to follow the process guide to that. We're going to press the set button. We're on auto. Change it to manual. Press the, okay. Now we're going to go to a percentage. We're going to go all the way up to 100. I'm holding this down, rising up to 100. Again, the most important thing in this step is not to control temperature, but really just to get to a rolling boil. So we're controlling the pressure, the percentage right now. We're up to 100%. Rocking and rolling with that piece. That's locked in. That's going to go to 100%. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn our heating element back on and let it do its thing and get a boil going. All right, this is boiling aggressively. We're ready to move on to the next step on the process guide, which is simply dialing back the PID controller. Doesn't say to what, but I'm gonna just, we're gonna take it down to about 75% and try to get it to a more normalized rolling boil. All right, we're at 75%. What we're gonna do at this point, we're gonna take our hops, premium hops. Again, this is the German Tettnang that we're going to be adding in at this point. Okay, get a good whiff of that. We're just going to drop her right in. Okay. Whoop, whoop, one straggler. Okay, we're going to let that go. 60 minutes. All right, we had 3, 2, 1 ribs going. Again, like I said, we had 3 racks on there. We're at hour 6. These babies are ready to come off. You can see they're not quite falling apart, which is good, but they have pulled back from the bone. Oh yeah. All right, guys, night has fallen. We've reached 60 minutes on our boil. We're dropping in the honey at 1 minute out. That is a loose honey, very thin. Again, 1 minute out from completion. Honey is in. Okay, we're on step 5 in the process guide, the Whirlpool. This one's pretty easy. We got done heating everything. Now we just got to spin it. The purpose of this is really just to collect all the sediment into a cone so we can collect it. Let's get it rolling. Ports open. Pump on. Okay, as you saw, we ran into a bit of a snag. Again, my pump is situated higher than both of these ports. So to get that pump primed and able to actually get water moving through it, you got to get the entire pump lower than these ports so the pressure works out as it's supposed to. So we've got it lower than both ports. It's primed, it's ready to rock. Turn on the pump and you can see the Whirlpool starting to work its magic in there. We're going to let that go for 10 to 15 minutes. All right, as you can see, we had to call an audible. Our wort chiller, we have a hand-me-down wort chiller, so our fittings, with the fittings that we have, we are one hose short. So we weren't able to use our pump. We are going to resort to gravity. So this is going to be a little bit of a touch and go situation. We're going to try to contain the flow, and we're going to be monitoring the temperature as you can see on the PID. We're going to try to get that to 70 and control the flow so we can maintain that. All the while, me trying to not miss the hole there. So we're going to open this, about a click and a half, and then we're going to hit the water. Okay. And we've got no beer coming through yet. All right, we got our hoses flowing. We had to do a little siphon action, working with trying to get one higher than the other. We finally got these hoses flowing. Again, this would be a lot easier if we could use our pump and use this system as intended, but we were just one hose short. Next time, that's what we'll fix. Easy fix in the grand scheme of things. We're just going to have to hold this in place till we get this thing filled up. All right, we've let our beer sit overnight, let it cool down. My basement's somewhere between 65 and 68 degrees. The beer has been pretty well cooled. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pitch the yeast. Again, we're using liquid yeast. What this package instructed me to do, this is what they call a smack pack. So there's a little nutrition packet that was inside the yeast. You smack it, you break it up. That allows us to get eating at the yeast and start the process. You can see that the bag blew up just a little bit. So what I've done, I've got my blow-off tube that'll be going in here. I've sanitized it. I'm instructed to sanitize the bag. I've got a funnel up there. I sanitize that. I'm sanitizing the heck out of all of this. I've got a water bucket that my blow-off tube will sit into. So let's get this going. Let's pitch this yeast. So we want to sanitize the bag. I'm going to be awfully liberal with how much I'm using here. Sanitize it. Shake it up. And pour it into what we've got going on here. This doesn't smell great. Okay, funnel out. You can see it's already changed the color of the top part of the beer. I assume that that's working. Again, I have sanitized this blow-off tube, but I am going to do it again at the location where it is going to be touching anything related to beer. Okay. That is going to be a tight fit, but we are in. I suppose a tight fit is a good thing. Appears I need a bigger bucket. So we want this to be submerged in the water. I was told a healthy amount. But again, that might not be enough. So we either need to find a stand for this bucket or we need to get a different one. We're going to let this sit. Again, this is going to sit for about 3 weeks. So I'm going to end up covering it so no light gets in it, but I don't think that should happen in my basement, but we'll keep you in tune on the progress. Okay, and that's a wrap for home brew number 1. We had our ups and we had our downs, as you could see. For the most part, though, the process guide was really helpful. However, I do wish it gave me a few more resources specific to recipe tips or general use for planning your beer. From an understanding of the brewing process, that was really our biggest shortcoming. Thankfully for us, sous chef Derek had brewed before, and he was able to walk me through a calculator online. Even with him having some experience, though, we found ourselves with a lot of guesswork. Without him, I don't know where I would have started, and I feel I would have been SOL. From an equipment standpoint, the only trouble we ran into was during our wort chiller process, as you saw. And this is because we have a prototype system. Thankfully, it really wasn't that big of a deal, and we have a good game plan for how to tackle that challenge for Brew 2. The footage that I failed to capture was our hydrometer results. We drew that right before it went through the wort chiller and got a measurement of 1.046, which is right in the wheelhouse for this beer. So that would suggest that this was a successful brew day. I'm told that we can only screw this up with contamination from here on out, but I'm certain I will challenge that theory. So if you made it this far, home brewing is clearly your jam. Please like and subscribe to check in for how this beer turned out, future brews, and some grilling adventures. Thank you again for tuning in to brew with us today. We'll catch you on the next brew. Later.